Well, hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Welcome again to Living Springs Retreat. We're so happy to have you again. Now, speaking of you and Living Springs Retreat, how exactly did you get involved with Living Springs?
Well, I've been coming here for a long time. We're trying to think about it. I don't know whether it's 12 or 13 years, but it was probably 13 years ago. An American pastor, his name's Pastor Herb Paholka, he's not with us anymore. He apparently saw one of my lectures on YouTube and contacted Michael and got me to go to Peekskill Church, which is where he was the pastor, which is in New York. And so I went there and I stayed with him and his wife. And 1 year later, he said, "We've moved to Roanoke, Alabama." And he said, "And we've got a facility and we're going to start running health programs." So Michael came a few days early and basically showed them how it's to run and what they're to do, and then I came a couple of days later because I was lecturing somewhere else.
Okay, so since that initial involvement or introduction to Living Springs, can you tell us, do you own Living Springs? Do you live here? Do we work for you? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
I don't own Living Springs and I don't live here, but it's like home to me. And on an average, I usually come 2 or 3 times a year to either run retreats, which is where I would come in like the health director. I give lectures, do the consults, or a couple of times in the last 2 years, I think it is, we've run health schools where that would be like a 10-day.
Okay. So Barbara, how can people know where you are?
How can people know where I am is we have a website which is the same title as my book, which is Self-Heal by Design. And you can have a look at where I am. Also, you can download my lectures from there.
So they would go to selfhealbydesign.com,
Yeah.
and then somewhere there in the menu they'll be able to see
That's
where you
right.
are. Okay.
That's right.
So Barbara, in the last year or so, you have become even more popular than usual. There have been a lot of scams out there now, people impersonating you, whether it's video, impersonating, even cloning your voice to make videos of you saying things that you're not really saying, articles, all kinds of things. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've become aware of that's been happening in your name?
Well, what's very interesting, Vanessa, is I'm not on Facebook. I've actually never been on Facebook. I've never done Facebook. I don't even have a Facebook account. Some things happen on Facebook and my daughters will tell me or my sons will tell me. So I have discovered that there are a few things on Facebook that are definitely not me. In fact, it's a bit scary looking at someone looking like you, sounding a little bit like you, but it's not you. And I'm not saying what I would normally say. Anyone who knows me well knows that it's not me.
So when people are hearing you either saying verbally or writing that you're an expert or a doctor, what would you say to that?
I usually laugh because I'm not a doctor. I'm just a little lady from the rainforest, really, that use natural remedies on my kids and now share them. I also never call myself an expert because I don't consider myself an expert. I'm still learning and I'm sure will till the day I die. So if anyone appears to be me and they call themselves a doctor or an expert, it definitely is not me.
Okay, so just to clarify, you are on no social media platforms, no TikTok, no Facebook, no LinkedIn, nothing personal that you have a personal account. If there are doctors claiming that you are endorsing them, what would you say about that?
I would say, unfortunately, it's not true because no doctor has approached me and asked for my help to endorse anything. And I'm not a salesperson. I don't sell things.
Okay, so what would be the recommendation you would tell people if they think that perhaps something may be you or may not be you? How can they be 100% sure, oh, this is definitely a scam? What are some of the precautions they should take?
Well, number one, I'm not on Facebook. So it's on Facebook, it's not me. Number two, I am not a doctor and have never claimed to be, so if they're claiming that I'm a doctor, in fact one post said recently I'm a board certified cardiologist and I've written 23 books. Oh dear, we laughed about that one. I've written one book. It's Self-Heal by Design. So if it appears to be me and it's selling something, it's not me. If it appears to be me and I'm claiming to be a doctor or an expert, it is not me. And if it's on Facebook, it is not me.
Okay. You mentioned the one book, Self-Heal by Design, but there is a second book that you've actually worked on and it hasn't been out yet, but tell us a little bit about that book.
Well, the next book that we're hoping will be able to start printing by March, it's called Sustain Me. And the Sustain Me is basically an acronym for the laws of health. It is a handbook on natural remedies. A good friend of mine, his name's Shane, and he is our graphic designer. And he's doing a marvellous job, but it's just taking a little bit longer. And he's also doing something that everyone likes today, which is referencing. Yeah. So I start at the head and I look at different ailments and I go down the body, right down to the feet, and look at different things that may happen to the body and what you can do to bring about healing. So what I aimed for it to be was a handbook on natural remedies that could be in every home, really.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the name Sustain Me?
Well, my daughter, Jessica, she's my romantic daughter, and she came up with the Self-Heal by Design. So her and I had lunch together one day and I said to Jess, Michael's PR says I've got to get my own acronym. So we looked at so many words, 8-letter words, and we just couldn't make anything fit. And I wanted it to be quite obvious. So New Start, that's very obvious. Every letter is for the law, but it's got a copyright. And they said, no, get your own. But we came up with 2 words, a 7-letter and a 2-letter word. And it was Sustain Me. So that's sunshine, use of water, and I like use of water, even though it's not W for water, because use of water, a time to drink water, a time not to, and use of water for natural remedies. So I like that term, use of water. So it's sunshine, use of water, sleep, trusting God, and I like that being right in the middle. A is for abstain, then there was I, then nutrition, the last 2 are moderation and exercise. So we've split temperance into abstain and moderation, and we looked at I, and we knew we had to get something for air. I said, what do we do with this? And then I went, inhale. So we had our laws into the Sustain Me wording. And then the book was already, I guess I really wrote the book a few years ago, so it's been a few years in the making. Anyone that's written a book knows how long it takes. And then I put it by my husband, who's my biggest critique. I said, what do you think of Sustain Me? He said, it's good. Now, if Michael says it's good, it means it's fantastic. Okay. And then I put it by the graphic designer. I said, what do you reckon about Sustain Me? He said, yeah, it's good, it's good. Okay. So everybody that I put it by
green light.
Said, yeah, green light, green light. So that's why we went with it.
Okay. So Barbara, those that have listened to you have heard you many times quote things and say things from the top of your head. So it seems that you have good memory. Do you?
No.
So how do you do it?
I really don't. We just had 11 guests here at Living Springs, and even on the last day I'm still struggling with everybody's name. What I do is I go over it and over it and over it. My grandmother, she memorized great portions of scripture, songs, poems, so I grew up with my grandmother being able to recite amazing pieces. And I said to her one day, how did you do this? She said, well, my husband, which is my grandfather, was head of the experimental farm in Griffith, a little country town in about the 1920s. And she said, I had to spend a lot of time ironing. So I decided to use that time to memorize. And she would go over it and over it. So that was one of my inspirations. I also, when I must have been about 38, I went to a Christian seminar, and there was a speaker there, was a tall black man, Fijian, named Tavita Mazandoli, and he was, I think, only in his early 30s at the time, and he had a Bible he was presenting, and it looked like an old man's Bible. It was all falling apart, and he gave a whole presentation without even looking at the Bible, and 80% of what he presented was Bible. And I thought, how did he do that? And I talked to him later, and he said, I was brought up a Christian, I went a bit wild, I ended up in jail, and in jail he said, I came to know God. And I thought, I want to know God deeper. So he said, I started memorizing. So while he's in jail, he just memorized. It's a matter of going over it and 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 over it until you think, surely I've got it now. And then the next day you try and remember it, and oh no, you haven't got it again. So you go over it and over it again. So it's a matter of just going over it and understanding the brain. Repetition deepens the impression, and repetition is the mother of retention. So those sayings certainly showed me how that's how you do it. Sometimes there's shortcuts. Some people learn it to song, but then you have to sing the song to get it. And I also wanted to do that because I found that if I can keep eye contact with my audience, I keep my audience. So in preparation for a presentation, on my morning walk, as soon as I wake up in the morning, if I wake up in the night, I go over them and over them and over them. And sometimes when I'm presenting, God will bring a few other things to my mind, and sometimes I think, oh no, I haven't practiced that one. But whatever God prompts me to do, I do present it, and I just thank Him because it all fits. It all fits when I allow God to dictate.
So you're mentioning about memorizing different things, speaking to God and so forth. So you're a woman of faith. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Well, my grandmother that I told you about was always an inspiration to me. And I was not always a Christian. But when I was 25, a couple of things happened in my life that were hard. I had 2 little children, and I decided to start looking at the Bible. I was certainly inspired by a new friend I had who was a strong Christian, who used to share little bits with me. And what inspired me about her name was Sue, is that she talked about God as if He was her friend. And I'd never ever thought of God as being a close friend. And I remember she said, oh, I was so happy, God impressed me, get the clothes off the line, and I did. And then half an hour later it rained, and I thought, God can even help you in little bits like that. So that certainly inspired me. But I wanted to know the Bible for myself. I did not want to be influenced by different religions, by different opinions, and so I read it for myself. And what I found was that in the Bible there are truths, and they're all through the Bible. In fact, that's one proof that the Bible is basically a miraculous book, is that from Genesis to Revelation there's the same themes, the same thoughts, even though it's written by many different men and women. And so I surrendered my heart to God, and that happened when I was about 26, and I've just turned 70, and I can tell you today that it's the best thing I ever did.
Barbara, share with us some of your favorite scriptures and favorite books.
Oh, that's a very difficult question because there are so many that I love very much. And when I first became a Christian, my mother had not long died, and I thought she was floating around watching me. So I love the scriptures that show that when you die, you're in the grave till Jesus comes. I love the scriptures that tell about the new heaven and the new earth, and I like Revelation. I love Revelation 14 verse 1 where it says, I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their forehead. And I realized too when I read in Exodus where Moses said, I beseech you, Father, show me your glory, and where God showed him his glory and his name, which was merciful, gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression and sin. And I love the way the Bible weaves all of those together like just a beautiful jigsaw.
Do you have any favorite books outside of the Bible?
Yes, I do. And one of my favorite writers is Ellen White. One of the first books that I read was The Ministry of Healing. And I memorized one whole page out of The Ministry of Healing because it's so well said, and also because it just puts it in a nutshell. And I like nutshells. I like things that are clear and succinct and short. And I'm reading at the moment The Desire of Ages, which is a book that she wrote on the life of Jesus. And she's taken the 4 different Gospels, and she's taken all the... In fact, apparently there are 500 prophecies in the Old Testament about Jesus' life, the birth of Jesus. And so I'm reading Desire of Ages for the 4th time. And you might think, 4th time? Well, that's over 40 years.
No, it's such a beautiful book.
It's over 40 years. And also, about 2 years ago, I memorized Isaiah 53, a beautiful passage that predicts exactly what would happen to Jesus, how he would die, how he rose again. And another book that I really love, and I'm going to read again after I've read Desire of Ages, is Great Controversy. And Great Controversy looks in detail at the great controversy on planet Earth. And I love the way the Bible sweeps the curtain aside, showing what's really happening. And Great Controversy, it's very clever the way she has done it. She has taken prophecies of the Bible and then she's taken them from history. So it starts with the fall of Jerusalem and it goes all through the different ages, the Dark Ages, the Inquisitions, and then to the Great Awakening that happened probably... started with Martin Luther, gives a wonderful account of Martin Luther and the stand that he took, and comes right through to now, and then ends with the second coming of Jesus. That's also a remarkable book, and it will be the 4th time I've read that book.
Okay, Barbara, so you mentioned The Ministry of Healing, The Desire of Ages, and The Great Controversy. Are there any others?
Well, I love them all. But probably Steps to Christ. Steps to Christ, I've read that a few times, and I've read it again and again, and I've memorized sections out of it, and because it's so well said, I often weave it into my lectures.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Barbara, for being with us, clearing up some things and giving us some information. It's always a pleasure having you here. Thank you once again, and God bless you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Vanessa.